Hi everyone, welcome back to RC Pie on a cold but hopefully sunny day. We're here for the first run of the FTX Gladius. It's a little bit wet now, but still looking fairly clean. I'm sure that'll change. Out in the West Pennines of England. We're near a quarry and we're going to find some good rocks and give this a good test against some TRX4s and various other things. If you're buying a ready-to-run crawler, then the most important question is probably, how does it run? How does it feel? And I've got to say the answer is quite a good one. It's nice. It's set up with a nice balance of trail and rock crawling in mind. So whilst you might want it perhaps a little bit more supple for trailing, it's supple enough but has a good balance, so it's still going to be okay over the rocks. There's a lot to like about how this thing drives and not very little to dislike at all. One thing that's very easy to praise is the steering. Steering angle is decent, but the thing that was a real surprise and a real bonus is the steering servo. I have to say, for a ready to run, this is about as good a steering servo as you're going to get. It's nice and quick and it's torquey enough. So yeah, there's no complaint. Usually the first thing you're thinking about doing is changing the steering servo, but with this it just didn't feel like it needed it. So that's a great thing to say. The overall geometry feels really good. It's got short overhangs front and rear, particularly at the front, so you can really attack things. So that's great, and of course those portals are giving you the clearance for both your track and your wheelbase. The balance front to back and left to right is pretty good. I'd quite like to improve it for traversing, side hilling, but front to rear, it's got really nice balance. If we are going to compare it, let's see what two. We've got an Element Enduro Sendero HT, a Traxxas TRX4 Defender and a TRX4 Blazer, another Defender, then TRX4 High Trail, another Defender, and then an Element Enduro Night Runner, then the wild card of an FMS Atlas. Most of my time was spent running with the Atlas and this particular TRX4 Defender. And for the actual trailing sections, I mean, they all ran as nicely as you would think they would. They were all really cool, they all look poised, they all look well controlled, and they're all running as nice looking scale rigs. So probably the least points there would be for the Gladius, because I've got to say it's not the prettiest. Now on something a bit more technical, trying to get round this little trail came round this rock. Now I'd already run round here, but we decided to go back the other way and try and get a little bit of footage. TRX4 fell off a few times and the Atlas didn't quite get it, but to be fair, they didn't attack it the way that I would have suggested. So when I pointed out not putting the wheel on the rock and just hanging on the edge, the Atlas was straight round. I headed round with the Gladius, but it was definitely a testament to the Gladius's steering angle that it made that feel and look really quite easy. Now attacking it in that way with this TRX4, it still wasn't the easiest for it, because there was a bit more worry about balance, but it got round. Now this was a new line that I'd not tried, and I didn't really know what was over that lip, because I was actually standing to the left of the camera here, and there's quite a big drop off. If you don't get the line right, then very easy to tip over the top. The Atlas dealt with that pretty well, but struggled a bit with the steering angle, and then lost it there on that steep descent. TRX4 managed to hold it together, and I think got round okay with a few bits of adjusting, but that's okay. It managed to maintain its poise and keep those canyon tyres hooked up before we had another go, because you can't just give up after one go, can you? So I'd had a look at the route this time, figured out where I needed to put my wheels, and no real issue. Just a bit of a manoeuvre there, and it was quite happy to go where it wanted. Now, I think that section was quite a good place to look at what's probably my biggest gripe with the Gladius, and that is the low down modulation. So because it's got that cheap speed controller, the 1040, I think it's suffering a little bit with low down modulation. And if you are doing anything technical, if you're just trailing, it's fine, but if you're doing anything technical, it can be quite hard to just move forward very slowly and maintain control, especially if you're on an incline. Here we attacked a route over some rocks with some hefty breakovers. The Atlas dealt with it magnificently, really, apart from dropping down the other side. It then got stuck on its nose because it's got a big front bumper. TRX4. Now, the driver of this wasn't confident, but it coped really well. That's the most difficult bit, I think, that first breakover, and it did really well. And this, of course, is the car that we're most interested in the comparison to, as we know that the Gladius is something of a TRX4 clone. So if we can keep up with that, then we're doing okay. So here it is. It is a little bit noisier. That's in first gear, in low gear, but did pretty well. Over here, you've got to keep your eye out. It's a bit tricky, that descent, but stayed on its wheels. Now we've got a couple of tricky climbs, the sort of thing that you come across a lot when you're out trailing, and the sort of thing where you end up challenging your mates and really seeing who can get up these funny lips. This was still fairly wet from rain in the morning. There's some of your sort of typical steps where the more you try, the more you wheel spin away and dig it out, like the TRX4 is here. Now, I think the Gladius outperformed the TRX4 on these climbs. I think it got a little bit more clearance. I think the balance is probably slightly better because the body shell is so light. Comparing it to the Atlas was quite interesting. I wasn't expecting the Atlas to perform quite as well. It is slightly modified, this one, but nothing too extreme. Now I think the Atlas does pretty well climbing because it's got the cab on the front, so it's got a bit more front weight and very little on the back. But out of the three, gotta say, I think the Gladius was the best performer. I think one of the reasons why the Gladius is doing so well on this section is those Hyrax clone tyres. Now, I wasn't expecting much at all from them, but they are tall, so they're giving you a little bit more clearance for getting up these lips. So a bit bigger than these canyons. But they are very, very grippy for this sort of dirt. Although they're supposed to be rock tyres, I think one of the best ways of using Hyraxes is in loose dirt. Now, both of those trucks had had quite a few goes before getting up there. They didn't get up first time, as that might suggest. But when I had a go, I had a couple of goes, weighing up the line, and I think it probably made better work of it than either of the other two trucks. So again, great points for the Gladius. Now, although this isn't actually that steep, this rock is notoriously slippy. So I don't know whether any tyres would be getting this. We'll try some other rigs. But no traction. Whoop. Now TRX4 with the Canyon XLs. It's just like glass, it's a nightmare. This rock in these conditions is hard. So fair play to these Hyrax copies, they've done okay to get up there. And the FMS Atlas, again with canyons on. Just not finding that traction. Now, whilst we watch these trucks trying to get up this super slippery rock, I'll just tell you about kind of the extra features on the Gladius, the 2-speed box and the lockable diffs. Now, the 2-speed box, I think the ratios are about right, whilst the lower gear is very slightly too slow for me. I am a very fast walker, so for most people that's still going to be okay for trailing. It's a little bit loud, but it's okay, and it gives you plenty of torque. The high speed, the second speed, it's not too high, but it will give you that boost and that little bit of wheel speed. This Enduro, by the way, is running on Traxxas Rocco tyres, which are the same as Duratrax Approach. But yeah, back to the 2-speed box. I think those ratios are pretty good. The lockable diffs, those are working, they're operating really, really well, as with the 2-speed box. Seemed very, very reliable. No complaints whatsoever with that. The only little niggle is that there's no indication on your transmitter as to whether you've got your diffs locked or unlocked, or whether you are in first or second gear. And that's slightly annoying, because sometimes when you're trailing, you know, if you've decided I'm going to trail with my diffs locked, or I'm going to trail with my diffs unlocked to you know, get the realistic effect to then lock them afterwards, sometimes you're varying that and you forget what you've actually set it in. And that can be, I mean, just a little bit annoying. It's no big deal, but a little bit annoying. This Element Night Runner, this is running on Proline trenches. So you can see that even the premium rubber isn't really working. To be honest, on this sort of rock, on the North Pennines, when it's wet, it's undrivable. Even when it's dry, it's pretty slippy stuff. But when it's wet, you've got absolutely no chance. This is the result of a day's driving. I've got to say, that body shell and inner fenders are doing a great job of keeping things clean. Bravo. The sun's starting to go down a bit. I've had a good drive, good day with the Northwest crew, and I have to say, this FTX Gladius has done remarkably well. We've been driving against a variety of things, or with a variety of things, several TRX4s of different types, a couple of Enduros, another Element, a Night Runner, that Rock Hobby Atlas, which is surprisingly good. So different tyres, different trucks, and this thing has held its own with every one of them, even on these stock tyres, which has been quite a surprise, because these tyres were the thing I was expecting to let it down a bit. But honestly, I mean, it's a tricky test, because this kind of stone, where we are now, even in good conditions, it's very, very slippy and tricky to hang up or hook up any tyres. But when it's wet, these rocks are a nightmare. So whilst it's not grabbed hold and got straight up everything, it's done okay. It's done remarkably okay, and compared fine to canyon trails and proline trenches and other things. So, you know, they're not as bad as I might think. I do want to change them, of course. Maybe I'll put some proper high racks on, or some trenches, or something, I don't know, something else. But the thing that I really want is a bit heavier wheels, just that little bit of lower weight, of course. I would say that the weakest point of this Gladius is actually the speed controller. This Hobbywing 1040. Now, this is the first one of these that I've used, and I'm not impressed. The low-down control isn't great. It's not terrible, but if you want to be doing anything more technical, then that's the thing that's going to let you down with this. Everything else on it has done really, really well. Like I say, a bit of extra low-down weight in those wheels, that would help a bit. It's I wouldn't say top heavy, but if you're doing any traversing, any side hilling, then that's the one place where it's struggling a little bit. But overall for a bog standard, completely stock, ready to run truck, and for £269, this thing is awesome. It's absolutely awesome. It's really hard to fault it. If that was all you got and that was all you wanted to do, no mod in it, you'd be happy. But of course, some things will get done to it, and we will see how it progresses. But for now, I hope you've enjoyed that. I hope that's been interesting. Please subscribe to RC Pi if you haven't, and stay tuned for more of this and other trucks, and we'll see you soon. Happy RC car driving.